Hello and welcome to another episode of the Back to You podcast. I am your host, Lili Riley, and I'm so excited that you're here. And I just want to share that I'm having a really hard time talking about this today for some reason, obviously because it's very vulnerable. And this podcast is all about getting back to the essence of who you are. And I'm bringing on people that are going to be sharing their story, and you don't even know mine. So let's start at the beginning. And I want to preface this by saying anyone that I refer to in the story, I am not shaming, putting down. I'm sharing it from the perspective of the Lili that I was before through everything now. And I can tell you that now truly I'm at a place where it doesn't condone what people did. None of this is saying what anyone did was okay. And people do the best with what they know. And I've gotten to a place where I say, wow, if that is the best that you know, it like chokes me up. It breaks my heart. Like that is the best that you know. And that was the love that you knew. And it just breaks my heart for other people because it's obviously heartbreaking to go through that, but also to know that they also went through that to some capacity. Let's get into the story. I am the second oldest of 7 kids. I come from a very big family. My mom's from 6 kids and my dad's from 7 kids. And I grew up in a very abusive, unstable household. My mother was extremely mentally ill, and she was very physically and emotionally abusive. And in my life, chaos and unpredictability was normal for me. We grew up with the police showing up at our house. Sometimes we called them, sometimes neighbors called them, sometimes our parents called them. There were always really high, chaotic experiences happening growing up, and that was normal. And as the second oldest of 7 in that environment, I took on the role of protector, and I stepped into an adult role. And my identity at that age was shaped by me having to survive, me having to protect, me having to be super hyper vigilant and know every single state that my mother was in, things that were going on with my parents. I had to be super aware of all that if I was going to protect and take care of all of my siblings. My parents ended up getting divorced when I was younger. I was around 8 years old, and it took them, I believe, 4 to 5 years for the divorce to finalize. So it was a very long journey. And my mom had gotten into a relationship with someone who had violated me and my sisters for the time that they were dating, which was around 3 years. And this instilled the belief that I'm on my own. I have to take care of people. No one is there to protect me but me. Because not only do I have to protect everyone else, I have to protect myself. And it instilled this belief that I'm not capable of doing that. Because look what happens even when I do give everything to protect, to put myself on the line for them and step in. I still can't do that. So it started also forming this idea of inadequacy. And not only that, but everything with my mother, because this is what she was shown, was that love is performative. Love can be taken away from you. Love is something that's dangled in front of you like a carrot, and you have to present yourself in a way that fits what they need, so then I can finally get a piece of what I deserve. And sometimes I wouldn't even get it. And sometimes that wasn't even enough. So it started formulating this idea that I'm not safe to be me. I started forming this lens of I'm not okay. And I have to make sure that I do everything perfectly, that I have everything in line, that I am the best at everything that I do. And maybe, just maybe then, I can get an ounce of love. Maybe, just maybe then, I can get an ounce of feeling safe. And it also formulated this belief that life is against me. And my whole history, I had evidence to prove that. That at home, where everyone else is safe and is held by their parents and fed and bathed and taken care of, that I was different than everyone else, and I didn't get that. And I had to work for that. That wasn't something that I was just given. I had to earn that. And it started forming this relationship with trust of even when the carrot is dangled in front of me and I'm promised this, and I do everything in my power, I can't trust that because I don't know. It's a roll of the dice. Am I going to get it or am I not going to get it? Even when you do everything and go above and beyond, it can just be ripped away from you, Lili. And so this is what I created my world these were the belief systems in which I operated in and seeked out everything to affirm that, because I had no other evidence proving to me that I was worth anything more than that. And that's what our brain does in a way to survive, is let's affirm what's true, because at least we can be vigilant and look out for all of these things, and we know the expected outcome of that. Anything else is, I have no idea what that is. I've never been exposed to that. I wouldn't even know what that feels like. It would feel wrong for me. So I started seeking out and acting in patterns that matched exactly what I knew. And my first intimate relationship was with someone who was also very mentally ill and was a drug addict. And it was super chaotic and dangerous, and something that a 16-year-old girl should not be involved in and should not be exposed to. There were life-threatening situations that I was in many times. And for me, I said, well, I can handle this. I know how to deal with this. And I believed, and I had attracted someone in my life that affirmed the belief that I have to earn love. And still, even if I do everything, it doesn't matter. It didn't mean that I felt safe. It meant, oh, I recognize it. This is what I'm used to. This is the language I've learned. I've learned to mimic the language of unpredictability. I've learned to mimic the language of earning trust. I've learned to mimic the language of performance. I haven't learned to mimic the love of softening and surrender, because I learned when I did that I was in danger, because I literally was in danger. I accepted instability as normal because I knew nothing else. And I remember the moment that I woke up. I remember the moment when the cycle came to a literal sudden stop and God's hammer came down on my life and woke me up. Me and my ex-boyfriend at that time, I was 18 years old, and it was my freshman year of college. My first month, I was on scholarship to play rugby. And me and my boyfriend were driving back from Kensington. We just done a drug run. We pulled over in a gas station. And I remember we pull over in my car. I'm sitting in the passenger seat and he's sitting in the driver's seat. And we were in some type of fight. I can't remember what we were fighting about. And he had always discussed with me and saying that you have no idea what it's like to be addicted to this, for this to be the only thing that grants you any peace. And I remember he sat in the driver's seat and I was sitting in the passenger seat, and he said, you need to know what it feels like. And I had not injected any heroin up until this point. And he looks at me, and I remember I was so afraid. I was so scared. I remember my heart just sank into my gut. And I was feeling that I'm going to die. And he took my arm and he set up my arm and he injected me. And all I remember is waking up again. And he was yelling at me, and I had realized that I had near fatal overdosed. I had no idea what was going on. I woke up completely just feeling super sick and felt like I woke up out of a dream. And we were driving back, and he was about to shoot up. So I get in the driver's seat, and we're driving back, and he near fatal overdoses in the seat next to me as I'm driving back. And so this whole situation goes down. He ends up being okay. We go back into our dorm, and we go back to his dorm room after this whole traumatic experience where I see him near fatal overdose. And so we're driving back to the dorm room, and he shoots up again, and he does it again. And I sat there and I thought to myself, this is it. If I continue down this, whatever fucked up path this is, I'm going to end up dead. I'm going to end up in jail. It just breaks my heart for that girl, because that was the best that she knew. And I got to a point where I said, there has to be another way. There has to be another way. This cannot be it. And I broke up with him. And there were all of these things that happened in the school where there was an attack, and I had to report things to the school. So then there was a restraining order, and he was kicked out of the university. And thank God that I had rugby. Being in that community has brought me some of the most amazing things in my life. Not only the most amazing things, but gave me back my life. And so I leaned into rugby. And in college, I went through a slew of different things, moving through how this was showing up in my life. I had developed a really, really horrible eating disorder. And I actually had a wake-up call when I had a meeting with our athletic trainer. And I had missed my period for 3 months at that point. My hair was starting to fall out. And I go to the athletic trainer and she asked me, do you know what the female athlete triad is? And she talked to me about it and she said, I'm going to be honest with you. You should really take this seriously if you're playing something like rugby, because this can lead to early signs of osteoporosis. Your period is your number one vital sign as a woman, because that's the first thing that goes when your body starts shutting down. Because your body goes, well, there's all of this chaos going on. We're not going to reproduce and make more, so it starts shutting it down. It made me look at how I was treating myself and how I was looking to control very uncontrollable feelings through food, through my body. My perfectionism and performance nature was coming through in so many different ways. I went to a eating disorder therapist. She, in her own way, completely changed my life and showed me that underneath all of that, this is where I started matching the behaviors with the trauma. She walked me through how all of that stuff started to connect. And that opened up so many incredible doors for me to explore and to heal and to move through. I would say that was a super pivotal time of my life. And through there, I've worked with mentors, I worked with coaches, I've dove into this world of spirituality. And a huge thing for me was the philosophy of yoga and the greatest teachers that have taught me that my greatest gift comes from when I alchemize the experiences that I have been handed. And that everything that I have to be grateful for today is because of that. Because of every single version that has made up Lili into who I am now. I would not be the Lili I am right now. It chokes me up. It's so beautiful. I would not be the Lili that I am if I did not experience those experiences. And to be in a place where I get choked up at how grateful I am for who I had to become through all of that. It doesn't mean I'm grateful that I experienced abuse and trauma. I don't think anyone deserves that. I don't think anyone can argue that. And was it okay what happened to me? Absolutely not. I wouldn't wish that on anyone. And I got to go through the experience of holding every single version of myself of who I had to be to move through that. And that every version of myself I believed I had to be because of that was because I was doing the best with what I knew. And I wasn't perfect. I was far from perfect. And I did not do some good things. I really didn't. And I was doing the best with what I knew. I was doing the best, and moving through that, I was truly able to look at everyone in my past who I believe was a monster, was the reason for everything that I'd gone through in my life, why I was the way that I was, why I had money problems, why I had blah, blah, whatever the list, the endless list of what my life looks like now because of that. It wasn't in my past. It was with me every single moment because I was living my life trying to avoid all of that, to never experience that ever again. I was living and perpetuating in a loop of victimhood and of my story. And I had every single reason to not be where I am, to not move through, to not forgive, to not let go. And I got to a point where I said, who is that benefiting anymore? One of the greatest pieces of advice that my dad and my stepmom gave me was holding on to anger and resentment is like drinking poison and hoping that the other person dies. That was what I was doing to myself. Every single time I blame them, because I have gotten to a point where nothing they ever did ever meant anything about me. Just because I had to earn my mom's love doesn't mean that that's true. It was the language that I learned with her. It was what I mimicked within our relationship. I learned the language of performing for love. And I realized just because I had to do that with her doesn't mean that I have to do that. I put that on myself. No fault of my own. But when I realized I created that, I got to recognize that that's not a truth. Was that my reality? Now, do I have evidence to support that? Of course, but that's not a truth. Because if that was true, then everyone would have to perform for love. It's not a truth. My beliefs around money. I believe I wasn't safe around money because that was what my mom would fight with everyone about. To me, money was something that we had to give, we had to work for, we had to manipulate people for. I would watch a woman turn into the ugliest version of herself around that. I was scared. No part of me felt safe to hold money. No part of me felt like, why would it flow easy? Why would someone act like that if money flows easily to me? Why would that be true? And then I go my whole life thinking that I have to burn myself out and say yes to things just because of making more money. And I couldn't do what I love, because if I did what I love, my mom would have done what she loved and she would have made why would I believe that? It doesn't have to be capital T trauma for it to affect you. I just had a moment the other day. I still work through that feeling of being comfortable around men that make me feel a little bit weird. I still feel that discomfort sometimes. I wanted to go into that with myself. And I said, Lily, when was the first time that you ever felt that? And it was actually before my mom's one boyfriend. There was one time I was 5 years old and I was with my dad and I was holding his hand and we were signing up for swimming lessons. And I'm holding my dad's hand and we're walking and I let go of my dad's hand and then I go to grab his leg. But I realized I grab his leg and I look up and I saw it wasn't my dad. It was some other man. And I got really uncomfortable and I felt really bad. I felt scared. I started forming this little 4-year-old brain idea that I can't trust people. If I let go, then I'm in danger, or whatever story. We're not consciously doing this. And why I'm sharing that is that these things you don't have to have had a horrible life or a horrible childhood and know that the pain that you feel is still real. The pain that you feel and that you're still moving through, even if you feel like it's not traumatic, can still have an effect on how you move through the world. And dude, people are handed really shit cards. And just because maybe your story objectively, because I've heard this from people of, well, my story is not as bad as you. You have only lived life through your eyes. You have only experienced the pain that you have felt. You would have no idea what relative pain that someone else feels is compared to that because you've never been inside of that head. The pain that you feel is just as real as anyone else has felt pain. Of course, there's moments where we can say, okay, 100%. What they're going through is really, really traumatic, and it makes me really recognize that it can be really worse. And I still feel what I feel. I still felt scared or angry or upset or left behind or like I can't trust people because that's what I felt. And even if I'm in the place I am now and I can look back and I say, okay, I saw it the way I did at that time. Can I hold the version of myself that was doing the best with what they knew? Because now if I experience that, maybe I would have experienced it differently. Great. That means that you're growing. That's the objective. And it doesn't mean that we have to shame or guilt different parts of ourselves that move through life a different way. You were doing it to the degree in which you saw the world. I can definitely look back on different versions of Lily and say, okay, Lily, come on, And she didn't need to hear that. And me now, I'd be going through that differently. What she needs is to be held, to feel safe, to feel loved. And I'm going to do that now for her, for every version of myself that I was. And to know that I would absolutely have dealt with those differently now. I'm a different person. And what I share through the perspective of life, through the way that you look at life, through the way that we view our past, how we relate to our future, it can change for you. You get to decide that. When I say the way that we respond to life is our choice, it is our choice. Absolutely. It doesn't mean that bad things don't happen to us. When something is happening, we're not responding to that. We're responding to what that reminds us of. We're responding to our resistance to it, to what it's triggering inside of us. And when we can get to a point where we can face and accept and love and hold every single part of us, which means we're going to have to feel all of that, then we get to find a state and a moment of clarity where we can look at the situation for what it is, not what we're making it mean about us. What that thing is triggering inside of us still means we have to handle and deal with things. There's still things that we're going to have to handle and do. And I would rather you respond to it for what it actually is. Another quote I heard by Peter Crone recently is, it's not the world, it's your world. It's the world that you live in, the world that you've created, the way that you look at life and you relate to it. I share all of this because it can change. You can look back at your life and recognize that those were actually all your greatest gifts. And when you can do that and you practice that over and over and over again, look, I know things are going to happen to me moving forward. And because I'm moving through this experience in that way and reflecting on the experiences that I've been through, allowing them to fully touch me and allow them to be what they were because it couldn't be any other way, I get to do that moving forward. I get to be more open with life. I get to be in flow with life more. I get to surrender. I get to be open to other opportunities and experiences because I'm not trying to make life the way that I need it to be based on my limited past, which by nature, I'm going to create a limited future. I think my plan's greater than God's plan. And I'm creating the plan based on all the worst things that happened to me. How does that make any sense? I'm letting a 4-year-old who didn't get loved run the show. I mean, I love her, but I'd rather be the one driving. Pain does not define your future. Pain is a part of being a sentiental being where we feel things. But suffering is a choice. Suffering is our resistance to all of it. And I create everything that I do because I don't want you to suffer anymore. I don't want you to be fighting and resisting life because I know life is really hard. Ram Dass, we're all just walking each other home. We're all going to the same place after this, guys. Let's find a way to make it easier for everyone and to enjoy whatever limited time we have here. We came here to evolve and to enjoy the ecstasies of life in every capacity, in every facet, in every way. It would be a damn shame that you allow any of this to not allow you to enjoy life, to be open and experience the depth of all of it. You don't have to suffer anymore. Patterns and behavior and all of this, it can be broken. So I'm going to end this episode here. I say all of this every single week from the deepest part of my heart, from so much love and compassion and understanding that I have no idea what you're going through. And I can only stand here being someone who's moved through difficulty in my own way. And by nature of being human, it's difficult. And we can all relate to that. So I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Back to You podcast. All of my love always, 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 always. And I'll catch you on the next one.